Hey everyone! So Tesla Full Self-Driving version 13 just started rolling out recently, and a day or so ago I got version 13.2.2, and I wanted to go ahead and make a video addressing the things that I know everybody wants to know, what's good and what's bad. So we're going to get right into it, and the first thing we're going to talk about is the good. So you'll notice right now, the speed limit of the road that we're on is 35 miles per hour, and this road, historically for me, has always been a pain point because the car always wanted to go about 10 miles per hour slower than the speed limit. But as you can see now, we're already off to a good start. We're doing the speed limit, and even as it goes through turns, it only slows down as much as it needs to and then immediately accelerates back up to the speed limit. So we've got some huge improvements off the bat with speed control. So here's another really good example of speed control improvements. We're on a 35 mile per hour road that up here in just a moment switches to 55 miles per hour. Now on previous version 12 builds, it would go 35 through here, but when the speed limit switches to 55 here in just a second, the car would get stuck around 40 and just wouldn't speed up. But you'll see, we're already keeping up with the car in front of us, we're already speeding up, and shortly after passing the 55 mile per hour sign, we're actually going the speed limit. Now this is a big deal because like I said a second ago, in the past, once the car settled on a speed that it wanted to go, it was very reluctant to adapt even when speed limits changed. Now moving on to the next big change, version 13 actually enabled reverse during full self-driving, which gives the car the capability of doing multi-point turns when it needs to get out of a tight situation. So here you'll see one example of a dead end where there's a car parked on the right, and the car actually has to do a 3-point turn to get turned around here. Now this is just one example. You can see this car that I mentioned a second ago parked over on the right. We do a very good job of turning to the left. The car puts itself in reverse, backs up only as much as it needs to, and then pulls forward and gets itself out of the situation. And while this was a pretty simple turnaround, the car is definitely capable of doing as many points as it needs to get out of a situation, and there's examples online of it doing 10-point turns. Now let's take a look at a U-turn. Version 12 could do U-turns, they just didn't always feel very natural, and there was a lot of jerking in the wheel, but watch as version 13 confidently and quickly makes this U-turn, the steering wheel stays rock solid, and this is just a big improvement overall in this version. Now the next thing we'll focus on is parking lot performance. Watch as we turn into this Rite Aid, how smoothly and confidently the car navigates through. Now version 12 did do okay with parking lots. It could get through them much better than version 11, which was pretty much unusable, but there was still a lot of uncertainty and jerky steering wheel movements. But as we come through here on version 13, the steering wheel is rock solid and the car just does a great job. So while it may look subtle on camera, this is a noticeable difference when you're in the car. Now with all that said, is it 100% perfect yet? No, it's not. It still does have some slight weird movements from time to time. You'll see one here in just a second when we go to turn right up this row. But overall, it is a huge step in the right direction, and it gives me faith that pretty soon, Tesla's going to be able to handle parking lots perfectly. So there you see that little bit of movement in the steering wheel. That's pretty much about the worst of what I've seen so far on version 13. So we're going to fast forward for a second while I put another destination in the GPS, but watch how it handles this next situation. Some people may argue that the car is being overly cautious here, and I can kinda see that, but the more I watch this, the more I think the car made the perfect moves. Now watch this family walking up in the distance, watch the guy on the right pushing the carts, and take a look at this silver SUV turning down the row. We've got this family walking up and the cart guy on the right, which are both in my travel path, and then as that silver SUV turns down and blocks the route to the left, my car decides to just stay still. And like I said, at first I thought it was being too cautious too, but the more I look at it, the more I think that the car was predicting these people's moves well ahead of time, and I actually think it did all of the right stuff. So now we'll see that silver SUV starting to pass by the guy with the carts. We're still sitting still, and as soon as the path opens up, we start to move forward, once again with really solid and smooth steering wheel movements. The lady walking in front with the cart doesn't seem to faze it, but then we come to a stop again because it sees these other people pushing the cart. But as soon as the path to the right of them opens up, we start moving, and once again I keep repeating it, but the steering wheel movements are just so confident and smooth, and I just can't say how much better this does feel than version 12 did. So just keep an eye on the wheel as we finish this one out, and then we'll move on to the next topic. So since we were just talking about parking lots, we might as well roll right into actual parking. Now right now, this is still a little bit inconsistent, but watch as the car rolls up to this parallel parking spot at our destination and makes a really good effort to park the car. So we pull up forward, put the car in reverse, we start backing into the spot, and it almost pulls off a perfect parallel parking job, but at the last second, it decides to move forward and then puts itself in park. And you'll also see up to the right, we are in a Hampton Police Department only parking spot. But still, my point stands, the car is doing a much better job of trying to park, and while it still needs some improvement, I think we'll see this in upcoming builds. And even when it doesn't try to park like it just did here, it still does a way better job of just pulling over to the side of the road or getting out of the way and putting itself into park. Now this next one is a major improvement for me, because I was having a lot of issues with this. Watch as we turn left through this intersection, look at the hand signal over here on the left. Notice the car smoothly goes through, but in the past I had a lot of issues with the car mistaking that hand signal as a red light. Now here's another example of this issue being resolved. On version 12, the car would pretty much always come to a stop even when this light was green, because it always mistook this hand signal over here as a red light. But it looks like now that issue is totally resolved. So I'm sure there's a lot of good things that I'm going to miss during this video, but the last one that I do want to talk about is watch how confidently the car travels between these two other lanes where the cars are going slower than us. In previous versions, the car would always get hung up on the speed that the cars next to us were going, but that issue seems to be gone, and now it just confidently passes all of them and maintains its speed. Now this had really become a problem in the past when the car would try to pass people and it would hop over a lane to go around them, but it would end up slowing down to the same speed that they were going, and it would end up having to get back over behind them to make any turns that were coming up. So I'm really glad to see progress has been made on this, because it had been happening since the beginning of version 12, and I was starting to get worried that it was just going to be a thing forever. Now, let's move on to the bad. Now, the first thing that we'll talk about is the vision attention monitoring. If you're wearing sunglasses, pretty much any time the sun is shining into the car, the attention monitoring becomes unavailable, and the problem with that is you end up having to use steering wheel nag again, which is super annoying, and I really didn't realize how much I didn't miss that until I was back having to deal with it again. Now, I do think this is a pretty simple issue, and I'm sure they'll have it fixed pretty quickly. Now the other issue with attention monitoring is it's just way more strict overall. Pretty much the second you look away from the road or down at the screen of the car, you're getting some kind of nag telling you to pay attention to the road. Now the next bad thing we're going to talk about is kind of funny because it's also one of my favorite things about version 13, and that's the speed profiles. So you've got chill, standard, and hurry, and overall they do a great job, but they do have some quirks to them. Sometimes they shut off entirely, and normally this is at low speed, but I don't really know why entirely. But also, when they're engaged, it won't let the car go into reverse. So watch this situation we end up in here, where the car really needs to back up to turn around at the end of this road, but since the hurry speed profile is still engaged, the car ends up getting stuck, and I actually end up having to disengage and then re-engage FSD to get the car to go in reverse and get out of this situation. Now, if I had to speculate, I would say that the speed profiles are intended to turn off in low speed situations where the car either needs to park or make a multi-point turn to get turned around, but sometimes they end up cutting off on normal city streets and the car ends up driving way too slow, and it'll also sometimes drive kind of far off to the right, like it's almost getting ready to pull over to the side of the road, which is a little bit weird, but like I said before, overall they work pretty well. And you can see here, once I disengage and re-engage FSD using the button, the speed profile goes away, the car reverses, and it drives out of the situation just fine. So this next one did make me laugh quite a bit, because the car shouldn't have done it, but it actually ends up doing a pretty good job until close to the end. I think this one will show though that the car still isn't reading signs, because as you can see, we just passed a no through traffic sign, and we're squeezing through this really tight gap, but like I said, the car did it really confidently and smoothly, up until this point where it slows down for this speed bump, but then you see me take over because it gets ready to run over the edge of a curb. But like I said, it did do it smoothly and confidently, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing considering it should have never been there in the first place. Now this next one actually does have some good in it, but overall, I put it in the bad category. Watch up here to the right with this red SUV. They end up running their red light and pulling out in front of us. Now the good in this one is that my car saw that long before they got to the intersection and long before I even noticed them and reacted to it, but the bad begins as we go to pass them. So when we go to go around them, they start speeding up, and my car starts speeding up too, and we end up kind of in like a battle where they keep trying to speed up to get in front of us, and we keep trying to speed up blocking them, and we end up doing 75 miles per hour, which is 20 miles an hour over the speed limit for this road, and this goes on until we finally hit a red light up ahead with some traffic that actually slows us back down. Now you can see here, we're already up to 70 miles per hour, which is 15 over, and it only continues from here. So you see this car merging over in front of us. I could tell that the red SUV wanted to speed up and get in front of me before they realized that the other car was going to get in front of me. But you can see as they speed up to go around me, my car speeds up with them too. And like I said before, we just keep getting faster and faster and faster until the traffic ahead of us finally slows us down. Now I'm just going to go ahead and assume that this is one of the pitfalls of training FSD on human data, because this is definitely something that humans do, and I do think it's something that Tesla can fix. They're just going to have to spend some time to weed out some of the bad videos that they have in their AI model. So I don't want to complain about this too much, because I complained a lot about how slow the car was driving on version 12, but here's another clip of the car driving a little bit too fast for my taste. So we're on a 35 mile an hour road right now, and you'll see the speedometer get all the way up to 49 miles an hour. That's 14 over the speed limit. Now there was nobody around, and I don't think that it was unsafe, but I do think Tesla's going to end up having to slow the car down just a little bit in some of the scenarios like this. So I've had this next one happen to me a couple of times now, where the car ends up kind of getting stuck where it stopped at. So we had just reached one of our destination points in this video, and I've re-engaged FSD, and it just won't move, saying that there's an object in the path detected, and I end up having to press the pedal to get it going again. And I think this is interesting, because like I said a second ago, the car pulled itself over there on its own, but doesn't seem to remember that the path is clear. So I've had this next one happen to me quite a few times, where the car tries to pass somebody in a lane that's getting ready to end. So the silver car that we're trying to go around was only going like a mile or two an hour slower than we were going, and it decides to try to pass them, but as we go to go around them, they start speeding up, and it leaves us in this awkward situation where we're right next to them in the lane that's getting ready to end. And in this case, I just ended up taking over because it was so awkward. I didn't want to try to cut them off as soon as the lane came to an end, and so I end up just turning right down one of these roads and avoiding the situation altogether. But like I said, this has happened to me 3, 4, maybe even 5 times since I got version 13, and it had pretty much stopped happening in version 12. So this is going to be the last one in the bad category, and funny enough, I actually think this one is really cool, but it comes with some really big downsides. So watch as this traffic light over here turns red. It's kind of hard to see, but our car actually anticipates getting a green light and starts to pre-roll it, but it never turns green. But now it's time to move on to the ugly side of the video, and this is actually the perfect lead-in to it. So like I said, that previous clip was a perfect lead-in to the ugly section. Watch as my car once again anticipates getting a green light and starts to pre-roll. Only difference is this time the car was absolutely going to go through the intersection and ends up causing one of my first safety critical disengagements with version 13. Now I did say in the last clip that I actually think that this is pretty cool, and I do because I can see at some point where FSD watches enough videos of humans driving that it becomes almost superhuman at predicting traffic lights and when they're going to turn green, but as you can see, I just don't think that we're quite there yet. Now this next scenario happened to me about 3 times, 2 of which ended up with safety critical disengagements. I let this one go because if we pulled out and moved fast enough we did have time, but watch my side view mirror as this truck comes up behind us. I think we probably should have waited for him to pass before we pulled out, especially if we weren't going to floor it as soon as we did pull out. So this is definitely one of those scenarios that's going to need a little bit of work, as you'll see in my next clip. Okay, so this is going to be the last clip of the video, but this is another situation where the car pulled out in front of somebody that it should have waited for. This time, I actually end up taking over, and I have to give the car some throttle to make sure that I don't make these people too mad, and to make sure that I keep the situation safe. But anyway, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's watched the entire video. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give it a like and you remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in buying a Tesla, make sure you use my referral code that's down in the description. It can get you $2,000 off of a Model S or a Model X and even the Cybertruck. It'll get you $1,500 off a brand new Model 3 and $1,000 off a Model Y. These are really hard deals to beat. But once again, thanks for watching the video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.